this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca.
I'm Max.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation. We're the show that reviews adaptations for you, from one form to another. Please forgive the sunglasses. I'm fighting a headache, so sorry about that. How's everybody doing tonight? What'd you think of this episode? Go ahead.
No, I like this episode. I think of like the ones we've talked about so far, this is probably my favorite so far, I'd say.
I can agree with that. Max?
It was all right. I still say that Netflix chickened out, but...
All right. Well,
there were some things that I prefer that Netflix had done. We'll get to that. Or I like that Netflix did. So, yeah, overall, I like this episode. It's a pretty good episode. And surprisingly, some of my favorite parts are the changes. That's 2 episodes in a row.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel like a lot of times what they're doing is adding stuff, and because the original, source material is light for an episode, and in a lot of these cases, we're not losing really anything either. We're just kind of getting more. So, yeah.
Most cases, although...
In most cases, there's some things that are different. Yeah. All right. Max, do you want to tell us about the episode?
Well, it was titled Dream a Little Dream of Me, directed by Jamie Childs, written by Jim Campolongo.
Sounds right to me. That's how I would have said it.
And of course, Neil Gaiman and David S. Goyer.
Okay. All right. So let's dig into some of the changes, things that either, worked, didn't work. I mean, I think, like last time, there's a fair amount, like in spite of it sort of like following the basic story, there's a lot of differences at the same time. It's kind of interesting. So I don't know where we want to start. I mean, do we want to talk about Johanna Constantine?
Well, we can. I like the change.
Yeah.
She's really good in the part, but I'm a fan of Coleman anyways, ever since Doctor Who and also on Victoria. I think she's really good, and she really played the part. And it was kind of cool hearing her foul mouth too. I had never heard her foul mouth, and that was just kind of,
That's fun. I mean, the thing I'll say is because like I know that John Constantine is a character in DC Comics, but I don't know anything about that. Like, I have not read any DC Comics. I just don't have any real like.
Did you ever see the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves?
No, I haven't seen it.
Neither have I.
I know that it exists, but I haven't seen it. So I just don't really have any familiarity with the characters. So for me, like reading, the issue or listening to the audiobook, I'm just kind of like, all right, who is this guy? Like, I don't really know that much about him. Like there's not. It doesn't. It just kind of assumes that I think that you have some background on him, which I don't have. So he's kind of boring to me because I don't know anything about him. Whereas they put more effort into, I think, fleshing out the character in the show. I do have a sense of who Johanna Constantine is, so she's more interesting. But I think it's just because I'm not saying John Constantine isn't interesting. It's just that they didn't put it in the originals. So
yeah, I like all that whole opening sequence, going to the church and seeing Rick the Vic, played by Mira Cial, for Wheel of Time season 2. We still don't know for sure who.
Nope.
But I spotted her right off the bat. I'm like, I know that actress.
Yep.
All of that just really did a good job at explaining who Johanna Constantine. Well, I'll just say Constantine is.
Yeah.
Now, see, I don't know Constantine from the comics. I know Constantine from the one season of the Constantine show, and then from all of his appearances in the Arrowverse over on the CW, including being a main cast member of my favorite of those shows, Legends of Tomorrow. He was a main character. I really that's my Constantine in my head. I've never seen the Keanu Reeves movie, so he's not Constantine. But this Constantine is really cool. A lot like John, but it's not John. I read an article, or a bit of an article, and Gaiman was, this is his favorite performance he's seen of Constantine on screen. And he says it's not so much a gender swap as a new Constantine. As a different Constantine.
Right. And I didn't know, because again, I don't know that much about the John Constantine character, but there was like a line in the episode where there's a reference to like her family, like her, and so I didn't know if that was supposed to be like a little wink at like, hey, there's other Constantines out there, I'm a different one, or if that was like a real thing for the character. I don't know.
We have you seen the entire season?
No.
Have you watched the full season? Okay.
No.
There's an episode.
I'm behind, but yeah.
Okay. There's an episode in the season in the past that has Joanna/John, if you're looking at the comics and audiobooks.
Okay.
Great whatever grandparent, also named Constantine.
Wait, what episode is that?
When I don't remember
24/7?
No, that's the diner.
No,
24/7 is the diner. It's the one with, spoiler alert, it's the one with the guy who didn't want to die. He just decided he wasn't going to die.
I have seen that one. That one.
She shows up as a Johanna Constantine. That's why Morpheus in this episode said, Yeah. That's why Morpheus has said I've known your family for centuries.
Right. Yeah.
And that goes back to her.
Okay. Got it.
So yeah, I think they did a really good job of building the character and explaining. And there's one major constant with John Constantine. Constantine always loses an Astra to hell. As far as I can tell. I'm not sure if it's in the movie, but in every version of Constantine I've experienced so far, she loses a young girl to the forces of hell.
But that was added in this episode. Like that wasn't in this issue.
But I believe it's from it's in the Hellblazer. I believe it's in the Hellblazer comics. I know it was included on the TV show. I know it was included on Constantine.
That was a smart thing to add, I would just say, because like if it's pulling from other sources of this character, but it wasn't in this issue, like I think adding it in this episode made a whole lot of sense, because again, it just gives you like a little bit more about who this person is.
And Constantine's pretty much the only DC character that's being pretty much the only major DC character that's being kept. I don't know if you'd call Lucifer a major DC character or not, but Constantine's
I don't know
being
anything about
kept,
DC.
Whereas they've dropped most of the others. Like we didn't have Chaz, the cab ride.
No,
Chaz is one of his sidekicks in a lot of his stuff.
Okay.
What were you going to say, Max?
You can go.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just had that one point that popped into my head.
As far as other changes, I already kind of mentioned that I feel like they kind of chickened out on some things.
Yeah, go with that.
And the biggest standout here is like with Constantine, we have some scenes of gore, of horror elements. Mm-hmm. We see the girl's hand come off, which is there for shock value.
Yeah.
We see the demon come out of the guy, just split him in half.
That was pretty cool.
And even that was kind of a chicken approach at it in the gore aspect. Like they did a decent job of using your imagination on that.
Mm-hmm.
It was still kind of like you didn't see a lot of detail of that.
Did you by any chance watch Lovecraft Country?
Yep.
Do you remember that transformation during the sex?
Vaguely.
When she splits open, and that was the best of that sort of shot I've seen. It's gory.
But in horror terms, they went from like body horror from the comics to just more run-of-the-mill kind of stuff.
I'm happy for that because it was one of my changes that I put a thumbs up next to in my notes was that we don't have Dad coating the walls.
Oh,
right?
God. Yeah, that was gross.
even though we didn't see much with the creeper being consumed by the dreams, they left the creeper, that whole thing out. That was the body they stumbled across.
Speaking of dad on the walls, what show does that remind you of?
Not sure offhand.
The Expanse.
Oh.
The Expanse.
Oh, okay, yeah. It looks like proto-molecule.
Yeah.
In the comic.
It's that same, the brown sludge, yeah.
Gross, yeah.
It's still like, it's the same concept of the body horror where they're just,
For a second, I thought you were getting at that invisible dude on the boys.
No. And it's just, in a way, they chickened out on it, but it allows them to lower the age rating that this can be seen.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that they sort of swapped it for is basically the sequence where, Johanna walks in, and because we haven't seen Rachel yet, like they start with Rachel in the comic, so we haven't seen her yet. So the little scene where she walks in and it seems like Rachel is fine, like that's a fake out that works, because that's basically what they swapped it for. Yeah. So instead of this gross visceral stuff everywhere, it's like a reversal of, oh, okay, it seems like things are good, and then yoink.
See, not okay. I wouldn't say it's so much for age on that, but because there's already too many for it to be, anything but TVMA. So I think it's more all those other little categories they put on screen when they see a TV, TV whatever, and they'll put like violence, language, gore, or whatever. It's going to be more general adult audience, because not everybody in the adult audience, even the ones that would watch a show like based on a comic like this, are down for seeing gore.
I think you might be right, because you're right. This isn't really a teen show. I mean, some of the episodes might be, but some of them are not.
Right.
So,
but even people who like adult dramas.
Putting it in context of either The Boys and Game of Thrones, this is like child's play.
Yeah,
this whole series is child's play compared to those two.
Okay,
yeah, and I appreciate that.
Like, I don't know if I would say. I mean, some of the stuff is. I mean, okay, granted, they do pull back compared to the comic at some points. I will agree on that. But I still think it's pretty, like, some of the episodes, right? They vary quite a bit. That's what's interesting to me, is like some of them are fairly light and some of them are not. So I think it just depends. But yeah, they dialed it back a little bit. But and
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just that's part of the adaptation process.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, because when you're looking at something on a panel in a comic book with that, comic book style, it's not hyper realistic. It does have a different feel than something that is realistically portrayed in a TV show.
Well, I could also point out that what happens to, I can't remember what her name was, having Rachel. Her dad against the wall takes away from her state of being.
Yeah.
And that's the big shock value is the wall, and you see her, it's like that's not nearly as bad as seeing her dad on the wall.
That's what I mean, is I think there's a trade-off, because you don't have the grossness of it, but on the other hand, you get a little bit more emotional impact, because, well, for multiple reasons, and because we've already gotten to know Johanna a little bit better as a character, because we didn't start off the episode already knowing that Rachel was in that state. Like it's more of a later episode shock. And there's just, you get those moments of connection, even if you don't really believe the fake out still serves to further that emotional connection there, so that when you see her actual state, there's that more of an emotional impact, rather than just like, this is gross and disgusting. So I mean, I prefer that, because I think that's more interesting to watch.
I think it plays better. This whole sequence plays better. I think most of this episode plays better than the issue. But, I agree. By something I was reading earlier, there was a line in some referring to Gaiman having had 30 years now to be tweaking this story in his head, maybe even on paper. So for all we know, all these little changes we see that, in my opinion, have so far made the show better then the last two, this episode and the last week, both episodes I think are better than the comic book issue, in my personal opinion. And I think that might be because that writer of that article might be right. He might have been tinkering with this story the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, people do. I don't know if he does in particular, but writers definitely do.
Tolkien sure as heck did.
There's another factor. It's definitely a possibility. Mm-hmm. But, reaching a wider audience is also one of the goals of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why they dropped the gore. There's another factor that gives reason to that there's a benefit to dropping some of the gores. Gore costs money. Yeah, whether you're doing it with latex, rubber, plastic, or CG, gore can get expensive. Not just material goods, but also the time and effort people put into it. It's cheaper to not do all the extra gore.
Yeah. I don't know. You can go to some of the B movie guys and they can get it done for like $350. So
yeah, but most of their budget goes into those B movies. Their entire budget goes into the effects. Yeah. Most of the actors are doing it on like, hey, yeah, I'll do that for you. Friends of friends.
Yeah. It depends.
Some other changes I just wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
I like that they completely left out the creeper. I thought that was pointless other than putting a body on the floor at Rachel's house.
Yeah.
I like them dropping that little bit Constantine had about Dream's outfit in public transportation. Because, that was just, it was just a gag. It was just supposed to be a funny line. And it would have cost too much to have that robes that he was wearing and then transform it to. Yeah. I mean
honestly, it would be funny to see him transform into Johanna Constantine's outfit.
That would be funny.
That would be funny. But what it would do though is it would change his whole look, like in not just in this episode, but like altogether, right? Like we've seen him not looking like that. So like, why would he randomly look like that in just this one moment, just so they could change it?
Yeah. I already mentioned that they dropped the cab ride with Chaz, which is there was no need for that, and it separated them further from too many DC character connections. I think they made Rachel more sympathetic by dropping her being a junkie.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that. I think that's interesting. Like, I mean, I think that's fine. That I think you're right. They made a point to emphasize multiple times saying that she was a good person, and I just of course you can be a junkie and also be a good person. But yes, I think that the detail about her being a junkie in the comic was also kind of needless. Like, does that matter? No, I don't think it does. So drop it. Yeah.
One of my things that made me the happiest was there's no freaking Dutch angle shots when they went into her apartment like they did, or her room like they had in the comic book. The entire bottom half of the page was all on an angle, and I'm just like, I'm having to read it like this. And I hate Dutch angles in movies and TV. Most of the time, it's used just annoyingly. That's when it's like on an angle. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that they didn't imitate the comic book that way. I was afraid that they did, because I couldn't remember if I'd seen that, from when I watched this a while back. And I think all the dialogue over Rachel's bed worked out better than, with Constantine demanding that Dream do something about her. I think it played better on the show again than in the book.
Yeah. The other thing on that was that I was thinking of is like in the comic, Constantine asks for help with his dreams, and in this case, Morpheus just did it on his own.
Oh, Constantine did.
He mentioned
Constantine did have a mention it, but didn't.
She mentioned it, but she didn't request for help.
Right.
And so I mean, I think that's good, because just in general, Morpheus as a character is not you know, a character that I like super relate to or anything. So
I don't think you can. He's endless.
Right. So I guess maybe you don't want to humanize him too much, but it was a little bit like of like, hey, okay, I'm going to do this for you, even though you didn't ask, kind of like, she did prod him to do something for Rachel. And maybe that was like, okay, he's going to take that one step further and do something for Johanna as well.
Did you notice if he made any mention about any dreams you have, won't be of like the prior thing?
I don't remember if that's the comic and the audio only, or if
because the audio and the comic and audio book he mentions like you won't be dreaming of that reoccurring nightmare.
I don't think he said it that way in the show.
No, I don't think he did either. He didn't say as much. It was a shorter thing that he said, but it wasn't exactly that, Max. Yeah.
Speaking of the audio,
that would have been a potential issue of him bringing up like you are still responsible for Rachel's death in some way. So you might have nightmares of Rachel's death if he had mentioned that.
Yeah.
So no longer nightmares of, was it Astra?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So since Astrid, I'm not sure. I think it's Astra. There was a line in the audio book that they added to that from the comics. It was an addition from that they didn't include on the show that I kind of really liked. It was talking about Mad Hetty. And Constantine was saying she really is 273 or whatever, 47 years old. On the show, she's 280. And the time difference is the same difference as now to when the comic came out. So they aged her up appropriately.
Older,
she has the same year of birth, apparently.
Right.
But Mad Hetty had said jackanapes. And Constantine's walking away on the audiobook and says, I mean, nobody says jackanapes these days. And I'm just like, I thought that line was kind of cute.
Just to emphasize her age, I guess. Yeah.
Did you notice there was one other thing about Constantine that is different besides gender?
Well, there were, I think, a few things, but what
didn't smoke? Does not smoke.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's like a character-defining trait of the DC Sandman. Constantine is
smoking,
even on TV.
Constantly smoking.
Even on
every
TV,
other version,
smoking.
I mean,
as a matter of fact, there's an episode of Legends of Tomorrow. He's laying in the sick bay, coughing up blood, dying. I mean, it's like you are dying. That's it, and he's decided, "Fuck it, I'm going to light up a cigarette."
Yeah,
and the same was true for the movie version as well
with Keanu.
Yep,
Keanu.
He was smoking, or no?
So yes.
Okay.
So that's like the stubbornness has changed directions from being a stubborn smoker to stubborn Johanna.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if that's just like a general trend away from like, just showing less smoking on screen in general, which is something that like, I think that's a trend where it used to be, not, all very common. And now it's less so.
There was something I've just watched this year that had a character smoking like crazy, and it was a recent, like it came out this year, and I can't think of what it was.
I mean, I guess
that'll bug me until later tonight
because it's used less now. Maybe it stands out more when you do use it as a choice, as opposed to just a thing you see constantly. But yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that. But yeah, it's a good point.
One of my favorite
go ahead.
changes I'll talk about later, but I loved the addition of Ethel and John.
Yeah, I was going to say we're sort of continuing that from episode 2. Like it's just like a more of that.
I haven't read ahead in the comics of where we're at, so I don't know if any of this comes from later issues, but I thought all of it was some pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was some of the best scenes of the episode, in my opinion.
I think they really had to add that stuff, in my opinion, because, well, I guess they didn't have to, but like, it just adds a lot more depth to John as a character, since he's going to,
You have to build him up, and
I'd say it changes a lot of motivations.
It does
for various characters.
Yeah, yeah, but like I'm just thinking of like in the audiobook, because I haven't like I'm just sort of reading the comic as we go, but like in the audiobook I'm ahead and I've read the whole thing, and I don't know, like I don't know what his motivations are. He's just a lunatic, right? Like, and so here,
but he's in a twisted sort of way. He's almost sympathetic.
Yeah, here he is, I think, a little bit, and because we haven't seen him do anything horrible yet. Like, we have reference to him having killed people. Like, we talked about that in this episode. Like, the last time he was trying to use the ruby, people died, and he's defending himself. But his mother doesn't think it's okay. So, I mean, that tells you something, because she doesn't seem like she's like, super moral high ground here. So it tells you a little bit of something, but it's much more subtle. And, you kind of just see someone who's had a fairly miserable existence, Do
you think she thought it through about giving him that pendant? The result of giving him that pendant, not to her.
I don't
But
know.
the fact that he would then just be able to walk out the door, because nobody would be, once the door is open, nobody's going to be able to stop him.
I mean,
she knew exactly what she was doing by giving it to him. How would you not
think of that, right? Like, she knows how it works. How would you not think of that?
So you think she realized she was letting him escape?
Oh yeah.
Even though she knew he was a killer?
She'd have to be, I mean, I don't know. She knows how the thing works, right? Which, by the way, that was a big thing where I was like, they really need a different name for this, because an amulet of protection does not adequately like describe what this thing is. Okay. Because it's not just protecting you. Okay.
It's like reverse. It's a reversey card.
Like, you come at me and it will slaughter you automatically.
Yeah.
Like, that's
while I was watching the episode.
Name.
While I was watching an episode, I was asking, if you sneezed on him, would you blow up?
Oh no, probably.
Oh my god, I don't know. That thing is, yeah.
OP.
I don't know what I.
That thing is very OP.
I don't know what I think about that thing, but it's ridiculous. Yeah,
I want to see what happens when you mix Dr. Manhattan versus that amulet and him.
Okay,
how that two go? Yeah,
I guess we'll just
Manhattan could just make the amulet go away.
Yeah, I don't know.
Of course, I haven't read DC in a long time. I know they added Dr. Manhattan to the regular, the Watchmen, cast to the regular DC universe sometime in the last few years. I don't know how he stacks up against some of those, really powerful entities.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
I know there's some crazy powerful entities in DC. I mean, entities that would make Darkseid seem like a Smurf.
Yes.
So where are we at next?
Well, the only other change I wanted to mention is just the inclusion of Matthew the Raven, because that's kind of a big thing.
Yes.
And I just like that, because I think a lot of the scenes that I enjoyed the most involved him. So, yeah. And
I think it's because you're Rebecca the Raven.
That's true. I have a little bit of a bias towards ravens. I don't know what to tell you.
The performance of the real bird and the fake bird and the CG, because they used all three. They actually had 3 birds on set, because I looked it up. I had to know. It's a combination of real bird, a fake bird, and CG, and it's just amazing.
Yeah,
it's it's extremely convincing. I never caught a shot that was wonky in any way. Granted, they were mostly all in dark lighting, which makes it easier to do your CG. It's when it's daytime that CG gets hard.
Fitting for the show. Yeah, you're right, because that's what
good lighting makes CG hard.
Quibble about Gregory from the last episode was it was bright lighting.
Gregory was the green one. Is that the one you said looked too shiny and metallic? Because I would think the shiny metallic would be Goldie / Irving, who's gold.
That one didn't bother me. It was
really
it was the grown one that
because
bothered me.
When I went back last week when I was editing, I'm looking at Gregory and I'm looking at Irving and I'm like,
No, Irving
looked less real to me than Gregory did.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It was just like the color. I don't know. I don't want to get back into it, but
so
anyway.
you know how in those CG cartoons they make the whatever animal look like the actual person voicing them a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a bit of Patton Oswalt in that Raven.
Yeah.
I love Patton.
Mainly in the chest area.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of matched his build a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see that.
Something about the way he moves or something. Yeah, I can kind of see it. But actually that did kind of lead us into like the next discussion was just like anything to do with like, scenery, CGI, visuals, music.
It was all really good. I think this when Rachel crumbled into sand, I think that might be the single best particleization / disintegration I have ever seen on screen. And it was a TV show, not a big screen, not a movie.
And I forgot that was coming, even though I'd seen, like, I just watched it again and I'd seen it before. And I was like, I forgot that like that effect was happening. So yeah, it was good.
Since some of this studio shares stuff with Witcher, the next season might be pretty interesting if they can keep these same kind of processes going.
I thought there was some excellent makeup on Rachel. And pretty good aging, however they did it with Ethel, whether that was CG or makeup or both. That was
good. Yeah.
The combination of makeup and CG has just got Game of Thrones really kind of broke ground here. I don't know, not sure of anybody else who had done it before, but they would have an actor with prosthetics and then part on their face, and then other parts of their face would be painted with the green, which is where the computer would work. And
I think they're doing it done before Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I'm not sure who did that though. I'd have to try to find that out.
Probably Marvel.
I was gonna, didn't they do that in like? Well, maybe not. I was thinking of like Lord of the Rings, but maybe they didn't do that. Maybe that's too old.
No,
Justin Elrod's chin.
I'd have to go back and watch all the special features on Lord of the Rings and to see if they did that. The first time I ever saw anything was with that. And I'm sure that they've used that. They used that to some extent on Ethel's face when she was aged. But let's see what else.
But overall, I don't have any. It was all good. I think this was a particularly good. Like I said, I had a little bit of quibbles with it in the last episode, but I didn't in this one.
The only other note I have here is, I did mention that they had 3 birds that acted opposite Tom Sturridge on set. So he actually got to sit and squat and talk to a bird. And the bird would sit there looking at him. Yeah. I'm like, that's cool.
Probably the same way you do with toddlers. You have something shiny in the background.
Yeah.
Hypnotize them with something shiny. All right, so let's go on and talk about our standout scenes of the episode, whether it's just most memorable, favorite, most hated. Take your pick. Who's got one?
Max?
Mine would have to be Matthew the Raven at the very end of the episode where you said, let's go to hell.
Yeah.
That was a good scene. I like that. What was yours,
Did you
Rebecca?
want to add any more to that, Max? Or
that was just for the comedy point. I liked that as the end of the episode. The scene with Rachel in the bed was hard to say my favorite, but it's reason it stands out.
It sticks in your mind. Yeah, I would agree with that.
It is very memorable. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about for you, Rebecca?
Yeah, I was sort of torn. I don't have like a clear one like I do sometimes, but in general, I think anything to do with Matthew the Raven, as I've already said, like I think those were all kind of standout scenes. But then, I think I gravitate towards where you were, Max. Not just the part at the very end, but like leading into that too, like just like the conversation between Johanna and Morpheus and then she leaves, walks off into the rain, and then it continues with just Matthew and Morpheus, and it was a strong ending, and part of it I think goes into like the theme. So I'll save that to talk when we're talking about themes, but.
It was a good ending, and it does. I believe the last line of the comic is something about and going to hell. So it
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
very similar.
matched
Very
up there.
In the comic, he was singing Sandman, and it opened with him singing
That's
Sandman.
right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's open with the radio playing it.
Yeah. Either way, I want to say
Yeah.
he sings it, but
Because he was asleep. He was asleep at the beginning. For me, my favorite stuff isn't so much one scene; it's the sequence of scenes between Ethel and John. It's just the ominous nature of everything there, and I thought it was some really good acting. David Thewlis is just wow.
Yeah, that's true. He's very chilling.
He's really good in this role. Really good in this role. I mean, no surprise, he'll be who I answer our next question down the road. Everything else was good. I mean, a lot of it was great, but just I thought those scenes were just so well done. I did also like the whole fake wedding / exorcism.
I liked that too. That was kind of like the weirdly, like slightly lighter version part of the episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, despite the gore and being with a demon, it was actually some of the funniest parts of the episode.
It was the only part of the episode really that had like a little bit of lightness to it.
Matthew.
Kind of, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah.
Although Matthew does tie into the themes too with something he was saying. So I'll get to that later.
Okay. Well, I think we can just kind of move right along if we want to get. You already talked about your actor pick, Glenn. Do you have?
Yeah, the big one was David Thewlis. And then of course Jenna Louise, if you want to say Coleman, as she used to be as Constantine, was great.
She was my pick, I think. Just overall. What do you have for us, Max? What are your picks?
For best actor?
Yeah.
Honestly, I have to go Patton Oswalt. I just love him as Matthew.
Yeah. It's a good pick.
He was good. Pick.
Let's see. Obviously, Jenna Coleman as Constantine was good.
Yeah.
And may as well give a little shout out to Jolie Richardson as Miss Cripps.
Yes, she was good.
She's good. Yep. And not that this is like a standout overall, but we'll just mention it again since we mentioned it at the beginning. But Mira Sayal is going to be a Wheel of Time actress, so I was kind of excited to see her in this little role. Yeah, Rick the Vic.
That's another gender swap.
Oh yeah, makes sense, right? I don't have a lot of female vicars, that as far as I know, but
in the Episcopalian Church, there are. Definitely wasn't a Catholic church.
Okay. Yeah.
Episcopalian / Anglican. That was church. Well, it was Church of England because who do I build? The Church of England?
That's true.
Or
Church of England.
The Church of England does ordain women.
Yeah. I don't know how many there are, but when and I don't know the history. Me knowing nothing about Christianity here, so I'm just gonna silence myself in this conversation.
Oh, random thing I just found here. Mad Hetty, Claire Higgins. Apparently her filmography has her in the original Hellraiser movies.
Okay.
Cool. And so now we know what Max does while you and I talk.
He just trolls IMDb.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because Hellraiser is a huge body horror type movie franchise.
Yeah.
So that was just interesting to see that as a filmography.
Yeah. Well, makes sense.
And why she's madder than the Hatter and ancient.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she is in the comics, and she is that old. So she's been accused of being a witch, but she says you don't live this long without knowing a few tricks. I read that online today. I looked her up.
Yeah.
She was in a show called New Tricks.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay. All right. So I think we're ready to move on and talk about themes. And I know Glenn always has a lot to say about this. But let's start with Max, because I think, we should let Max talk.
You don't want to do that.
I mean, I do, but
Yeah, I'm not really heavy on themes on this episode, just in general of we have in the comics there is definitely that whatever wasting away in horror elements as a theme.
Mm-hmm. Wasting away
And
in
addiction.
dreams.
Mhm.
Addiction.
Yeah,
Yep.
addiction. Yeah.
Because you
But they
have
kinda-
in the
they-
comic, you have Rachel's addiction to being a junkie, and then also to the sand. And in the comics, you
Smoking.
also have Constantine smoking. Neither of those addictions are present in this episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so they pretty much took that out. If that was
Yep.
like a theme, which I think it was to a certain extent, the addiction, theme, they pretty much took that out.
You have the, what you want to call, theme of feeling responsible for losing someone or why they died.
Yeah.
We have it twice with Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did it-
Morpheus, everything Morpheus has done or had done to him has these long-going effects of causing long-term harm with people. In the comics and books, we have all the harm it did when he was captured, with all people stuck in the dreaming or
Right.
unable to dream.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good, interesting question though. Like, I mean, do we think like Morpheus feels responsible for that? And is he responsible for that? You know what I mean? Like, that was Roderick Burgess,
Mhm.
I would say
And Alex.
to add on, that's right. And to add on to that theme, if we look at it from the standpoint of Ethel and John, they don't really seem to feel all that responsible, especially John, right? Because like at one point Ethel is like, yeah, the last time you used this, you killed some people, and he's like they were coming after me, like I'm defending myself. So like he's not taking any responsibility.
No,
for
he
that.
rationalizes his actions away.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me while Max was talking, we do still see addiction in a way.
Okay.
Morpheus is addicted to his tools. Without them, he is weak in basically having a longing to get them back. He has this need to get his tools back.
It's different though when you consider, and they said this in the episode specifically, like it's literally a part of him, right? Like, because I think Joanna was kind of accusing him of like being a little too attached to his things, and he's like, no, but
it's
that's
like we're
me.
addicted to oxygen. We are addicted to oxygen in that way, and that's what I'm trying. And in the same
You're
way,
stretching the theme a little bit here.
in the same way, Ethel is addicted to that protection amulet. It's kept her alive. It's kept her healthy. And when she gives it away, she dies. When she doesn't have it, she dies.
Yeah, I just don't think it. I mean, I don't know. I think they downplayed it enough that it doesn't read as that as a theme anymore. Because
it's there in the comics more, but
because Ethel gives it away without all much trouble, right? Like she knows she's going to die, and she just,
some mothers will give up an addiction for their child.
So I don't think it's as literal.
What I'm saying is it doesn't play into the theme of how difficult this is to give up when she gives it up without struggle.
So I would say it has less to do with being literal addiction as it has to do with power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And power is addictive.
Yeah.
And we were in the show, we were given several examples of him being only caring about his power.
Okay. Yeah.
And the same is true in the comics.
Think of it this way.
Oh, that's a good point. No, I like that. That's really good.
We've got an analogy between this show and the last one we watched. Well, what the last one we watched is based on. His tools are the One Ring.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. Like he's put some of his power into the thing as opposed to it like residing within himself. So
and he diminishes without them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so
I see that. But I
mean,
like
I am stretching that addiction concept, but there's still a link in concept, conceptually.
But I think what Max said is right, that by downplaying that angle of it, making it less about that, it becomes more about the power itself.
Right.
And you could look at it as, power being addictive. Like there's a link between the two, but it just makes it more about power than it is about addiction. Because addiction could be for many things, not just power.
And, given like recent social issues, addiction, like with say opioids, maybe they want to go away from that and more towards power being the problem over what you're addicted to.
Right. Because maybe addiction is sort of beside the point, right? It's
Yeah.
not really the main thing that we're trying to get at here.
And
No,
the
it's
only other
just
thing
like-
I'd want to mention is, like, when he saw Rachel, the first thing that came to my mind about her state of being was
Mhm.
cancer.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you could kind of say there is a cancer in the dreaming going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would have that association too, because when you see someone like that physically wasted and malnourished, that can be a result of cancer in some cases.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously it can be a result of other things, but
that whole description of her is just, at the beginning of the issue, the comic issue, audio chapter, is just gruesome.
yeah, it is.
It is. It's painful to read and listen to. And I've gone through
Agreed.
it like 4 or 5 times now, and it just... Did you have any other themes that you wanted to bring up, Rebecca?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, so I guess a somewhat smaller one, but one that I notice is sort of a theme, basically, of like, it's sort of being a mistake to go it alone. And in particular, I think this applies to Johanna and to Morpheus, because you have Johanna leaving Rachel because she believes that she puts her at risk by being with her. At least that's the reason she claims. We weren't there for that, so I don't know. That's what she's claiming now, that's why she left her and she didn't tell her. By doing that, she put her in danger, right? Like her leaving and just like leaving her stuff, that put the woman that she loved in danger, which supposedly she didn't want to do. So like, and as a character, there's an emphasis on her being that very like, just, they brought up like her exes and them all agreeing like, yeah, run away. She's just like selfish. And, like you get the sense that she's like a lone wolf character, and that she's doing harm by choosing to live that way. And then you see it with Morpheus trying to reject Matthew. Lucienne wants him to have a companion, and supposedly he should always have a companion, but he's rejecting him. And he kind of comes around by the end of the episode. And so I think that maybe he's seeing a little bit of like what went wrong with Johanna, and maybe that's influencing him to like change his approach a little bit. That going it alone is not necessarily the
That's
best
not
choice.
one I picked up on. You both have picked up on ones that I hadn't spotted.
Okay. Well, what do you got, Glenn?
I have one, but it jumped out to me. It occurred to me, this show literally had dialogue that sort of mirrors The Witcher and The Expanse and themes that they both had on occasion. Well, running. And that's that humans are bad. Matthew flat out says it, that humans are bad. And the show shows us humans that are bad. Our protagonist, Constantine, she's not good. I mean, she does good things, but she's bad, or at least she thinks, she's convinced she's bad. So I think that applies to her.
I was just kind of looking up some of the directors for the show to see what they've done. Mm-hmm. The one Jamie Childs, who did this episode, as well as the next episode and Imperfect Hosts.
Okay.
Also is doing the TV series Willow.
Oh, okay.
Did 6 episodes of His Dark Materials. And
a lot of Jamie Childs.
Lots of
Jamie Childs
stuff. Yeah.
The guy that did the first episode did Fargo and Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Outlander.
And some good directors on this show.
Sure.
One other point about the people are bad. The show literally went out of its way to say, don't trust humans. It was an added scene, not in the print material.
Yeah.
So they flat out, that's literally going out of your way to make sure there's a scene in there saying humans are bad. Don't trust them. So I think that's the one that stuck out to me. But go back to you with the directors and all that.
The director Marzi Almas, who does Our Wing or The Sound of Her Wings.
Yep.
You might know her from DC Legends of Tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's see, Arrow, Supergirl.
Sweet.
She did the 100. 12
100
Monkeys.
was okay. I have to go back and rewatch that. I only got the first two seasons.
She did 12 Monkeys, Outlander, Jessica Jones, Shadow and Bone, Lock and Key, Paper Girls.
A lot of stuff.
And Jigsaw.
Okay.
So
some good credits there.
A lot of the directors, if you were to look into them, have done a lot of interesting shows. And it kind of shows you for what happens if you get some really good directors behind some of these shows.
And there are a lot of directors that like doing genre, that prefer doing genre. And when I say genre, I'm including the comic book shows because that's and even before. I mean, that's inherently science fiction and fantasy combined because you have magic and technology. But yeah, there's a lot. But I gotta tell you, man, everybody needs to go and watch Legends of Tomorrow. Skip season. Start with season 3. Just skip seasons 1 and 2. Start with season 3. Watch it when you're finished. Then go back and watch seasons 1 and 2. But you don't need to see those. Just start with season 3. That's where it starts. Just like it was one of my favorite shows on television, and it's deliberate camp and cheese and. Watch it with subtitles because the puns are amazing. They're everywhere.
Okay.
Sounds like punishment.
Any other themes?
All right. I don't think so because we are way off topic. So I think we
we do that. Let me see if I had any other notes. How did Corinthian know to be outside the prison just when John got out? Did that feel super convenient to you guys?
Sure. I don't know enough like at this point in the story of like the Corinthian, like what's his deal? I don't know. Like how he like okay, so like Morpheus can find people when they're dreaming. Okay. So we know that. But like the Corinthian, how does he like know where people are or like what's going on with them? No idea.
What do you think, Max?
I would just say from a plot device, they're trying to interwind him through all the stories as much as they can.
Right. They want him to keep showing up because we want to remind ourselves that there's this other villain.
Yeah. And I understand and I like that because we already like his performance.
We already know he met the mother and he's on his way back and he probably who knows, had some kind of...
He might have followed her then. He might have followed her there then. Okay.
He might have known what the sun looked like. We have no idea.
And I thought it...
Yeah, I mean, I could believe that he knows who he is. It's more like, I think what you were saying, like, how does he know to be there at that time? Like, how did he know that that was the time that he was going to be coming out of the prison?
And maybe he was waiting. I don't know.
Yeah, you can't wait forever though. But okay, like if he had been following Ethel, which that's plausible. Then I buy that.
I just need some help thinking that one through. And the other question I had was, does Constantine know something? Because she told Matthew to look after Morpheus.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything in the episode that would give me reason to think that she would be concerned for what's coming.
My interpretation of it goes back to what I said about theme, which is that like she might recognize in
going it alone
another person who is going it alone and who is going to things up. There, I just threw another F-bomb at you. Because of that. So that might be why she expressed some concern, because maybe she's recognizing that in herself and in him.
That makes sense.
That was my interpretation.
Just looking for any last minute. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, did you guys catch the foreshadowing for the episode Dream of a Thousand Cats?
Nope. But I haven't seen that episode yet. So
John was talking about we can use the ruby to wish ourselves a world without Morpheus. And if you've listened to Dream of a Thousand Cats or watched it or read it,
I have listened to it, but I have not watched the episode.
It's all about wishing a world that's vastly different. And not having Morpheus would be vastly different.
I figured that was more foreshadowing towards their final confrontation.
That too, but the one that popped into my head was the Dream of a Thousand Cats, because spoiler, in Dream of a Thousand Cats, the humans wanted a world where they didn't have somebody way more powerful than them. And that's essentially what John would be doing about dreaming of a world without Morpheus. Getting rid of this person who's super powerful, who's coming at them, is going to be a problem for them. It's exactly what the humans did about the giant cats.
Okay.
So that's what, that jumped right into my head as soon as I saw that. And I think that's it for me.
Okay.
I have my whole thing there about how this related to The Witcher and The Expanse with humans being bad, so I'm good on that. Oh, I had more on that, but it doesn't matter. Going back to a topic we don't need to go back to, so. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. I had a great time chatting with you. This was really good, fun time. Thank you guys at home for watching. We will be back next week with what episode, Max? Episode 4? What was it?
A Hope in Hell.
A Hope in Hell. That's going to be interesting. And we might have a guest. I don't know. We'll see what's going on here soon. Everybody have a great day, night, whatever it is for you. And don't forget to be awesome.